crystal ball. I should play La Loteria if I could see the future. Maybe next winter, maybe not for 10 years. Her father downed the last of the coffee, grabbed his tool bag with a familiar clank, kissed his daughter on the forehead and his wife on the lips while giving her a discreet squeeze, then started out on his 10-minute walk to work. He was the head mechanic at Tino's Moflis, where they repaired transmissions, brakes, radiators, suspensions, engines, and, yes, even mufflers. "Make sure you walk with Carter this morning," her mother told her as she helped Esme into her pink backpack stuffed with books and papers. The girls almost always walked together, but the fog was so thick it made her mother nervous. "Si, Mama, and stay out of the street. Cars won't see you until it's too late." "Si, Mama." With a kiss, her mother sent her out the door. Esme stopped at the curb and looked all around her at the white filling the air. She'd seen fog before, but nothing like this. The house next door was fuzzy, as if someone had draped it with the cottony insides of one of her stuffed animals, and the house beyond that was just a blurry blob. She could feel the faint moisture on her skin as she waved her hand around and laughed with delight. "Esme, don't be late," she heard her mother call from inside the house. She started down the sidewalk and, after 30 steps, stopped and turned. Her low house was painted light blue with a tin roof, and it had nearly disappeared from view. There was just a hint of its color through the fog, which seemed to be moving slowly, sideways across the ground, like it was alive. Her house was on the outside corner of a sharp bend in the narrow street on the edge of town. Beyond it wasn't much, just a few vacant lots filled with chunks of concrete, before the jungle began, the green thick on the steep slopes around the valley in which the small town sat. She wondered if the fog would be as thick in town near the school. She hoped so. It was wonderful. Esme continued walking, the heels of her fancy black, slightly uncomfortable school shoes echoing oddly in the thick air. It was dim, almost dark. If the sun was up, and it had to be, she couldn't tell where it might be above her. The brightly colored buildings to either side, squat with nearly flat roofs, came in and out of focus, the fog sometimes sliding past her in visible wisps. She thought, chewing at the inside of her cheek as she walked, it was like tiny clouds. No, like waves on an ocean. She'd never been to the ocean, but she'd seen it on TV. The sidewalk was cracked and old, but somewhat level. The street, on the other hand, was in poor condition. Many of the narrow streets on the periphery of Xicotepec de Juarez were dirt, or in such poor condition the asphalt had crumbled to gravel, and there were frequent potholes. She reached the corner and waited for her friend. Esme was a few minutes early, but she thought it might take longer to get to school, walking through the fog. The familiar corners seemed foreign in the gloomy haze, strange, an island inside a cloud, floating, isolated and murky, and chilly. She hugged herself, thinking she should have worn her jacket, and looked around. Ahead of her, an ancient VW Beetle squatted at the curb, its rounded edges blurred even more by the heavy morning fog. Past it was Boba's small store. Its white walls disappeared into the fog, and the words, hand-painted across the front in bold black and red, "Cerveza Tecate, Tacos de Asada, ATM," seemed to hover in the air. She'd heard there used to be a bus to take children to school, at least the ones who lived on the edge of town like her, but now everyone walked. Maybe now that the war was ending, the buses would come back. She'd never seen the war, not in her small town, but the adults often talked about it. They said the town used to be busy and full of people. To Esme, it still seemed as if it was, especially downtown around the square. But her parents at Xicotepec had lost 3/4 of its population during the 20 years of war. In that way, it was no different than many cities throughout Mexico. There were a lot of empty and crumbling buildings in town. Maybe the people moving back would fix them up. The moisture in the air made sound behave strangely. She could hear a car in the distance, hissing along pavement. But up close, everything was muffled, as if she had cotton stuffed in her ears. The fog soaked up the sound, and what she did hear seemed to be coming from every direction at once, like the sound of someone approaching quietly. Esme turned and peered down the connecting street. She couldn't see anything but the post of a street sign, and the shadowed, grayed-out bulk of a house on the far side of the street that she knew was abandoned.